Hey everybody, I'm Stephanie Feld with Intensive Design Lab, and I'm super excited to be here with Jackie Flynn. Thank you so much for joining us. Yay! I know you do tons of things, and I want to give you the spotlight to kind of tell people about your work. Today we're going to focus on intensives with children and families. But if people don't know you, tell us who you are and the work you do.
Well, I'm Jackie Flynn. I'm super grateful to be on here too, Stephanie. And um, I'm a middle-aged woman, just doing my best.
Aren't we all just trying to do our best?
Yeah, yeah. Taking what resources I have and really trying my best and pivoting along the way. And that really leads into today's topic about not coming at any therapeutic experience, but especially intensives with a cookie cutter approach or an overly planned experience because we limit our clients. So I think we need to kind of resource ourselves, have some understanding of each person. Each system is unique. Let me
Yeah.
have these foundational ideas, what I feel like is of therapeutic value. Let me pull from those, and given whatever happens organically in session, let me go ahead and adjust to that. So that's my theoretical orientation. I'm um, I'm a private practitioner in Central Florida. I work with people of all ages. I'm most known for my work with children, but I actually work with maybe even more adults than kids. But I love working with kids. I work with couples too. So I do intensives with all of them. And I also do intensives with my consultation and supervision work because I'm a big believer in the momentum,
Yeah.
like being able to explore something in depth sometimes is more powerful than little chunks and then waiting a week and little chunks here and there. Um, so I love the fact that that's even an option. Also, in addition to the private practitioner piece, I'm a trainer for the Association for Play Therapy. I'm a approved provider, and I also train for EMDRIA. That's the International Association for EMDR. I just got a
hmm
award.
hmm
I was like, what?
That's so wonderful. Well, that's how I came across you, years ago is when I became EMDR trained and I was working with children and I thought, oh my gosh, how do we make this, really tailored to kids? And so I love that. And let me see, I want to show it off. This is great, not just for kids, but for everybody. But your flip chart, I just love it. So if anybody's here and you do EMDR and you work with kids or teens or people who are young at heart, this is gold. It's so
Oh,
good.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I'm at a loss for words. That's really neat. That's kind of new at the time of this recording. So to
hmm
see it kind of gives me the feel. So that's exciting. So I
Yeah.
wrote that, and then I have another book in the works, and then I've written several children's books. So that's about it for me. I like to engage in. I'm a play therapist, so I love all things play. In
hmm
play, we think of fun, but therapeutically, play, that's not the goal, is fun. Sometimes we have fun, but it's really to help us move beyond the survival states. When we feel stuck in survival states, or those that we're helping to be able to access those areas of distress with the safety, the relational safety, the environmental safety, the body safety,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
nervous system informed, we can really have the access to help heal all ages. Because if you work with adults, chances are you are working with children. They may not look like children, but you're working with their inner
Right.
children.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. Hello, if you're just logging on. We are recording, so if you prefer not to be in the recording, you could turn your camera off, but it's not a requirement at all. Um, Thank you so much, Jackie. Tell us a little bit about well, I'm curious how you got started in intensives, but I think a lot of people who work with kids get nervous that maybe an intensive would be too much for a kid, or, that shorter amounts of time work better for them. So I'm curious how you approach intensives with kids and how you kind of modify it so that they can get the most out of it without feeling, too fatigued or too overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Yeah. The big key is to customize it. So I start off with like, what is the intention? Why am I thinking that an intensive would be helpful? Now, I want to make sure that the reasoning is for the client and not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I do travel a lot and I am not available for certain amount of time if I'm off training in some other state or country or something like that. So I may say I'm not going to be here for 3 weeks, and that may be a reason why I'm suggesting the intensive, just so they can get this therapeutic experience. But mostly, it's based in the momentum. It's the thought of we can get further when we have these, and I typically work with like all my clients with EMDR and play integrated, but suppose that it's not even EMDR, we are opening those neural networks regardless. So to be able to open that up and get the extensive time to really get in there and work through the painful stuff, but also titrate in resources and
Mm-hmm.
have the time to do that without feeling rushed, that's where I start. Like, is this something that the client needs? Is it in the best interest of the client?
Mm-hmm.
Now, with
Mm-hmm.
kids, you mentioned like too fatigued. Kids do have, and I say kids, knowing I'm neurodivergent, so I have attention span limitations as well.
Right.
So, so I really incorporate in some breaks. So we may be working 3, 4, 5 hours, but it's not like a grueling, like the hours are set and sedentary on the couch and they're just following my fingers or play with puppets or whatever. There's some very, and I don't necessarily pre-plan them because it's more of me being attuned with the client on when do they need the break. And if you're attuned enough, you can feel the need in your body. Be like, oh, let's take a pause here, get a drink of water, go outside, um, and just really be able to pause and reconnect. Sometimes, like for teenagers, it may be they want to look at their phone, and anything like that, I consider a break. So
Yeah.
we have several of those organically in there. And then also movement. Anything with intensives. If you're working with a person intensively, especially kids, likely there's some stuckness in there that may be rooted in trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know about trauma is it stores itself in the body if it's maybe an interruption into the like flight or fight
Mm-hmm.
response. There may be this undispersed energy, this tightness, this fidgety, this need to move that looks like maybe like ADHD and fidgety and just kind of all over the place, but it could be that or a combination of um, just that mobilization response just kind of stuck in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I incorporate movement, nature when I can. If we can't go into nature, I bring nature in. That's also very regulating. So my big like second piece, besides like, is this in the best interest of the client, um, is it nervous system informed? Like I really make sure that I have their nervous system in mind in a developmentally appropriate way. So I'll have all kinds of play materials, and I'll have the like opportunity for expressive, aggressive, nurturing, following Dr. Gary Landris, like play therapy, kind of setup for the supplies and the equipment. And then also, I think about like how resourced are they?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes even before we get to the intensive,
Mm-hmm.
we've done some preparation for the intensive. It looks different for each client, but ideally we want way more good stuff than tough stuff. They
Mm-hmm.
come to
Mm-hmm.
us like this with way more tough stuff than good stuff. So we may spend a few sessions just building on their strengths. Tammy Van Hollander has a real great activity called the Greatness Sticks. We may do the Greatness Sticks activity. We may explore, some of their past accomplishments. Look at, I love the Strengths Shields. It's in the EMDR with Kids flip chart, or all many, many ways to resource right up into like reciprocity of play, just like this organic child-centered play. So I will do that beforehand. Just make sure it's all nervous system informed. And the next piece is I will have access to the parent throughout. Now, they don't always stay right there, but
Mhm.
I don't have them go really far with kids
Mhm.
because trauma, I mean, it's not like they're coming for summer camp. It is, we're working on some intense stuff, and trauma can feel really intense really fast. And if a child wants access to their parent, and that's, something that access feels safe to them, to have
Mhm.
not have their parent there could kind of make the therapy experience unsafe in some cases. So,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. I can imagine, especially with younger kids,
Yeah.
where their parent is, co-regulating with them. Which brings a question to me. I'm curious, what age ranges you're working with, and if you could give us an example of someone who you think like, ooh, maybe an intensive wouldn't be a good fit for this child, versus when you feel like, ooh, these are all the green lights, we're ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. So age is a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it. So for example, let's start off with the teenager. I've done many intensive sessions with teenagers that I guess that the longest I've done with a teenager has been 5 hours.
Hmm.
And that gives us opportunity, like one teen really was into art, gave opportunity to kind of prep the mask and paint it and everything. Then we did something else. We came back and dried it, and then we were able to do the, target selection, all of these pieces that we wouldn't have been able to do in that way if we didn't have 5 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
Her parent was in the waiting room and was just like working on her computer. So that's one example. So that there, all the lights were like, there was even a request from the client, be like, I wish we had longer. I want to do this,
Yeah.
and I knew that she would benefit from that extensive, uninterrupted. We did have breaks, but the uninterrupted. We even ordered pizza during it, so
Oh,
like
fun,
it
fun.
was fun.
Because if you're having a good time, you don't want it
Yeah,
to end. When kids have someone that's just like tuned into them, unconditional, positive regard, you can't
yeah.
get enough of that.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice. And it's interesting. It does sound like, oh, what a fun day. But her target was so
Mm.
hard. When you think about what play does, it allows for the safety and distress at the same time. She was able to experience this real painful scenario in a way that, like, she had some enjoyable moments. I wouldn't say that they were all enjoyable moments,
Sure, sure.
it was more than tolerable. We're eating pizza and she's like talking about like the outside of her mask versus the inside, how she views the world. And then we had the targets. We were able to develop a target sequence plan and then be able to move forward with even processing and get through all the phases right during that time.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
great.
pizza and had some ice water, did some sand tray, took it to all kinds of levels we wouldn't have been able to do. The word continuity comes to mind. It
Mhm.
was like this uninterrupted. I love Carl Jung's work, so I love the thought of flow, the deep
Yeah.
work kind of concept.
Hmm.
With a little kid, sometimes, and I won't plan like if they're say like under nine or under. I won't plan any longer than 3 hours. Um, But I do tell the parent we're going to work right up until it doesn't feel like it's helpful or tolerable. Our goal isn't to like have a certain amount of time under our belt. Our goal is to be able to process through a certain amount of material and do the resourcing until it isn't conducive to like a positive therapeutic experience. So we may break a little bit early.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people watching this may be thinking, well, insurance isn't going to pay for that. You know what? Insurance doesn't always pay for it. That's one of the drawbacks, although I think it should.
Right.
Like should or shouldn't, like who am I to say? But the value is there more from my clinical experience and perspective when it comes to being able to get like deeper therapeutic work done when you have these uninterrupted extended amount of times, the
Yeah.
value's there. But if they are at a point where it's no longer productive or it's no longer helpful or it doesn't have this like safety to them, I'll say, oh, we're almost finished,
Yeah.
and then we will end it early. So I always build in this flexibility really for anyone, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like I think about like I like to get massages as part of my self-care. And I'm like, man, I wonder how much time I have left. For
Mm-hmm.
that's not my thought process in intensives.
Mm-hmm.
It's the we want to work, and we want to have the time we need to work in a productive, efficient, therapeutic way. But when that's done, you
Mm-hmm.
know it, and we're gonna pause so this still is like a positive thing in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Would you say um, that you're doing more resourcing beforehand to prepare people for an intensive? Like is being well resourced, and I guess I'll use language that's, that maybe therapists who don't use EMDR are familiar with. If a client has good self-regulation,
Yeah.
is that kind of your litmus test or how you decide if someone would benefit from an intensive, or how do you know when it will be beneficial and when it might be better to stick to just the standard weekly?
Well, I'm kind of at the point now to where I stopped like accepting clients on a hour to hour weekly basis, and I only do intensives.
Hmm.
And typically, if it's a complex case and there's people that they wouldn't be able to really get the help in the same way, and there's not another option, then I
Hmm.
will see them. So sometimes it's like the opposite of the if they are in really big need and the intensive is
Ooh.
really so it's not are they like stable enough? Sometimes it's is everything so unstable where we need to do some deep work. That's kind of like
Ooh.
the piece.
I love that. Yeah, because then the work is the stabilization and the
Yeah.
resource.
And I'm with them throughout those pieces so they're not waiting, week per week and we get some really good work done. But I do, as an, and I'm going to talk about my adult work for just a little bit,
Mhm.
but this also holds true for teens. Um, I will meet with them prior and we'll do maybe some either online or in-person Santry, some of these deeper approaches that goes beyond words to where I can efficiently. I'm not going to say quickly because that kind of is indicative of a time amount. So it's not a time amount, but I will resource as much as I can, maybe one or two individual hours beforehand. And then we meet. I love to do, I call it rewilding EMDR, where I'll integrate play, nature, and EMDR all together. So I love to do sunrise sessions where we meet out on the beach and we do the EMDR out on the beach. It's fascinating, but I'll do some sessions before that that are 1 hour just in prep for these big intensives. By the time the intensives come, sometimes they're nervous, but quickly we start off with reflecting on the resources, and I do this with kids as well. So I titrate. It's not all working on the painful stuff.
Mhm.
It's pain, Remember, the power of play is like safety and distress at the same time. There's the painful stuff overlay by like lots of resources. If you're not familiar with the term resource, it's just something that's helpful in some way. So, for example, a resource for me could be my backpack because this helps me carry things. And it seems very like, oh, that's a tangible object. How can that be a resource? For me, it's a resource because I picked it. So our clients may pick something else that we think, if they pick it and it's in their psyche, like, oh, my resource is my phone, or my resource is my diploma, or I have a coin in my pocket that reminds me of my mentor, whatever it is, you can really kind of feel that, include that in on your experience, and it builds up your good stuff versus your tough stuff. So I do the prep like that. If it's with kids, then we'll do that in sessions beforehand as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it. I want to let people who are here live, if you want to put questions in the chat, we want to um engage with whatever's bubbling up for you. And while people are doing that, I'll ask another question that I have. You mentioned about parents, and I'm curious what your parent involvement looks like when you're doing intensive work.
Um, with intensives, and I love like working with the nervous system in mind, and knowing that especially children and adolescents are parts of systems.
Hmm.
They're not in isolation. So if you're not involving the parents, I love Paris Goodyear Brown's Parents as Partners book. This concept of like parents are part of the process. If you're not involving them, you're missing out on a big element of kind of just kind of therapeutic value. With that being said, a lot of times parents come to us very wounded, and parenting is hard, quite frankly. So a lot of the parenting work maybe look like strategies and things like that, parent consultation. So I do engage parents in the intensive process, and one of the biggest ways that I do is through predictability, the cue of safety.
Hmm.
Here's what to expect. So I would say, may vary from that, but, and I do that whether it's intensive or not. And with the kid, when you first come in, we're going to come in and do the sparkle technique. I love the sparkle technique. It's a little bit of adaptation, a lot of adaptation on Deb Dana's glamour technique from the polyvagal theory, but it's the let me have you think back the past week. What's a little sparkle, something that feels a little good to think
Hmm.
about? So my sparkle would be that Stephanie invited me to speak on here. So I think about that and I can feel it. So I'll say parent, whether it's mom, dad, or whoever it is, grandparent or caregiver, um, when you think about the past week and you think about, we'll call the kid Mary, you think about Mary, what's a sparkle that comes up?
Oh.
Well, Mary gave me a hug last night. I could feel it all in my body. Okay, let's just feel that hug in your body. Mary, do you remember giving the hug? Okay. Mary, when you think about a sparkle from the last week, what comes up? So the parents are involved in that way. Sometimes the kid won't say anything, and it's all you want the kid to have choice and autonomy and agency. You don't
Yeah.
force them to do anything that they don't want to do. Resistance is communication. It's not something to become overpowered. Also, I will give the parents some strategies, or like some parenting tips. So, for example, um, the day of, make sure that they eat breakfast. Protein is a big one
Mhm.
because we want to be able to have them feeling good. And
Mhm.
then I will ask them, are there any allergies? I used to ask that just in intake, but it's important that you ask that ongoing. I worked with this one kid one time for a long time, like 2 years. And then during COVID, we're doing therapy outside, and there was like a little shop by where we were meeting, and they had some biscotti. And he's like, can I get one of the big long cookies? And I was like, yeah,
Oh.
because the last I heard, he could eat those. I've actually seen him. And then when we went back, I said, I just want to let you know that so and so had a biscotti. We forgot to tell you, there was this diagnosis of celiac. What?
Oh.
I mean, that's like a big deal. So it's important to really kind of communicate with parents about just ongoing about
Mhm.
the safety of the child. Like I think of it, if you are EMDR trained, it's like this ongoing phase one and phase two. Like I'm continually remaining this curiosity of like any potential resources, any targets, any changes in the life, any secondary gain. And I'm
Yeah.
always trying to build some safety. And also, I work with parents in a way that's very mindful of not oversharing. Now, client
Mhm.
confidentiality is limited for kids, but you have to be very, very respectful that you don't share what they do and what they say. It might even be their even like their artwork or anything. If the parent comes in, you want to make sure you check with the kid, hey, is this something that you'd like to put away? Or are you all right with
Mhm.
it? What are you all right with me sharing? Because there's this conversation of I'm not gonna share anything with anybody that unless I feel like you're harm to yourself or others. You want to be trustworthy in that way. So I share that with parents too. Like I say, this is something that I may not share everything with you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So and they know why. And that way they don't pressure the kid to say or not say,
Right. Like, what did you talk about? How did it go? All that
or
kind of
did
stuff.
you have fun is a common one. And I mean, they might have fun,
Hmm.
but when somebody comes to intensives, imagine that they are reprocessing like maybe a suicide death of a parent or something. To say, did you have fun after the work that just because they're playing doesn't mean that it was fun. It could be
Hmm.
playing dead and like I've been handcuffed to the dollhouse for a whole session before and it's like and they're actually sharing their world with you through the play and sometimes that world is really painful.
Hmm.
So a lot of the parent work involves like supporting them in how to show up in a way that is like really supporting the therapeutic process and helping them feel heard and access to resources too because they can come um, very like wounded and they could hear something or see something and it just is so painful for them
Hmm.
that they're no longer able to participate in the same way. And sometimes too, this isn't always the case, but if a client is or a parent is in like some painful scenario, suppose there's a divorce going on. In
Hmm.
a divorce, sometimes people turn into a divorce separation, anything of that nature, they will turn into people that they otherwise are not.
Sure,
So
sure.
they may ask you questions with the intent of, I just want to know this information so I can share it with my legal team so I could get custody. As the therapist, it's
Mhm.
important that we're really there for the therapy. It can really kind of change our role if our what we're doing is just for the um, purpose of some litigation thing.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes it's just educating them on the therapy process. So that too is customized.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. We have some questions coming in. One more that I have, and then we'll go into the chat. So if things are bubbling up, make sure you get it in there. Do you use any workbooks in your intensive or to prepare parents or children for an intensive?
Well, sometimes I do, but I have to say very rarely, and it's changed. As a new clinician, when I was in grad school, I held on to the workbooks like they were my lifeline. Like, oh,
Sure,
if I
yeah.
have the best workbooks ever, then I will be a better therapist.
Mm.
But as I've gotten to be more seasoned and more aware of just the importance of the connection, the
Yeah.
therapy, the play is actually the therapy in the relationship. So there's this whole dichotomy between being with, being, and doing.
Yeah.
Both of them are valuable. So the whole thought of am I with the person and think of that too as in non-directive versus directive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a workbook can be more directive in nature. All of it has value, but what I know that needs to come first is this relational safety, and you can't do that through a worksheet. So
Hmm.
I think about like Dr. Siegel's connect and redirect. We connect, think about Alan Shore's right brain to right brain therapy or whatever the name of that book is, this whole connectivity. So I will go more non-directive of just allowing the child or the teen just to go wherever they need to go. And as I feel that connection, it's like we walk across that bridge of the corpus callosum over to the left hemisphere, and then I may say, hey, there's an activity that I think would be helpful. Now, I do have the EMDR with Kids flip chart, which is a bunch of worksheets.
Right.
And EMDR is very structured. That's what gets a lot of clinicians stumped. They're like, how do I work with like a 3, 4 year old, a young child in this very structured process? And
Hmm.
the key is that when you're working with children and adolescents, the play needs to be the foundation, and then the EMDR comes in around that.
Hmm.
So kids' brains aren't fully developed until the mid to late 20s. Sometimes a little earlier or later, depending on different variables. But we need to honor their development first, and then we can get in with all the worksheets. I personally love worksheets. I'm a former middle school teacher. So we used to, and just like many teachers that have turned therapists, they have found like value and safety in worksheets.
Yeah, yeah.
But I could tell you, like I've been in this office for a year. I moved to this one in January. I only have one workbook. It's Leanna Lowenstein's workbook, and
Yes.
it's more of just like a reference. But I'm not anti-workbook. It's just not my. I prefer to go non-directive for the deeper work first,
Yeah.
and then as I need to, I'll get directive. But I don't get overly like on my agenda.
Hmm.
Marshall
Hmm.
Lyle's one of the great mentors in the play therapy world and the EMDR world says don't have an agenda.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
if you go to therapy for somebody, I mean with somebody and you show up and you're like in pain and they're like, okay, today we're gonna do A, B, and C, and it's like, that's not at all what I need to work on. Man,
Right.
I'm like wasting my time. Kids have that vibe, but it's not necessarily cognitive. So you get what seems to be avoidance and resistance, which may be, and that's not a bad thing. That's communication of we're not going in the direction that that my nervous system is like aligning with.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if we're more on the non-directive, um, leaning more toward the non-directive end of the continuum, we can follow their lead and we get deeper work done because then they can go where they need to go organically.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I think so many of us need that reminder and that permission to just go where they're going. And then, like you said, then you get that light bulb of like, oh, this is a great activity that could go nicely here. But like always staying in the relationship and in the attunement first.
Yeah, I write about this in my book coming up. It's play is the therapy. So my
Ooh.
dad was a mechanic. He was a diesel mechanic, and he like had all kinds of tools. And he's not alive, so I can't run this metaphor by him to see if it's accurate, but it makes sense in my mind. I think of a mechanic needs lots and lots of tools, just like a therapist needs lots and lots of resources.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't go to a situation and say, oh, you know what? I love this wrench so much. I'm going to use this wrench on this whatever. Or I love this book so much. I'm going to use. Maybe that's not what the child needs.
Mm-hmm.
The child's not like someone to be fixed.
Yeah.
Safety is the answer. So the tools are very helpful. The intervention, the workbook, the activity can be very beneficial. But first, you need to connect with them and see what is needed and let that be something that is used as a resource, not something that right out the gate, like everyone with this gets this approach.
Right. Like to if you have a hammer, what is that saying? Like if you have a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Thank
Which I mean
you.
it definitely when we think about EMDR, we have the 8 phases and everything like that. So
Right.
it bumps up against all the structure, but they integrate well together. I mean, like beautifully together, like peanut butter and jelly.
Oh
If
my
you
gosh,
let
I
the
love
play
that.
be first.
Right, right. And don't get too in your head about it.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at some of these questions. Um, okay. So Kimberly is saying, I'm wondering if you strengthen the resource, like the backpack or a coin, or the sparkle with butterfly hugs and bilateral tapping.
You betcha. If you're listening and you're not EMDR trained, you might be like, what is that referring to? So EMDR is a great training to get. So if you're not trained in EMDR, I wouldn't necessarily do this because bilateral can open up some neural networks, even if it's done slow, um, and not done with intentionality. But in the context of EMDR session, be like, oh, notice that. Let's all tap that in. So I do this slow butterfly tap. We have this cross the midline. Butterfly taps are pretty powerful. I do it with the client, the family, because it's shared experience. Trauma Through the Eyes of a Child. That's a book
Mhm.
by Dr. Peter Levine. He talks about the difference between trauma, experiencing trauma or being traumatized is being with another. So I
Mhm.
take every opportunity I can, whether it's a shared experience of bilateral or mirroring, to really connect and attune with the client so that as they're reprocessing or we're resourcing, they're no longer like alone in that.
Oh, I love
So
that.
I do the butterfly tap with them, but I certainly do. I tap it in. I consider it, and this is in the flip chart, this concept of like a resource piggy bank. Let's just add as many resources in as we can. Let's notice that. Let's notice that. So we'll tap in. If the kid, because that is directive, and sometimes kids don't want to do that, and
Hmm.
they may not be open to any bilateral. I kind of trust in that maybe we're not working bilaterally right and left, but there's this safety from bottom up and
Hmm.
top down, so the integration can happen through that
Hmm.
way
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great. Let's see. Another one. It sounds like when you incorporate parents, it's more as a resource to the kids and doing the EMDR work. Have you ever done family intensives without necessarily incorporating EMDR?
Yeah, yeah. So the first part of that is the resourcing with the parents is definitely a big part of it. But I've done several sessions, not a lot. And this is something to be very mindful of. Is this the right scenario to do this with? But I will bring the parent in and have the parent present, but then I'm very much talking to them prior with the predictability, but I'll go like this, and the parent will be the one to do the tapping and the bilateral, and I'll pace like this, or
Yeah.
I'll ask the parent to come over and move and be attuned to the client connected. So it's very much the parents in there, but in a way that is helpful to the child.
Hmm.
It's not always a good idea. So sometimes the parent's involved in that way as
Hmm.
well. And sometimes if, the kid is, we're not able to get to the target, I like to have this kind of awareness of something that I know and it's brought out. So I'll do the sparkle and something that feels a little bit hard. So the parents
Hmm.
involved in a little bit of like, what's one thing that feels a little hard when you think about? So even before that session, I'm having them kind of reframe something, maybe that I don't want to say complain, but they've shared with me that's a hard point. Well, it's hard when she gets up in the middle of the night and we're all tired and it's caused us to say and do something. Those part, okay. And then quickly I will wrap it up with the parent, have them go out and the parent come back, or the me come back in with the kid, and then that is out in the open. It's in their prefrontal cortex. So parents are involved in that way as well. So it's very customizable. I only
Yeah.
have them in the session when it is helpful to the client. I
Yeah.
have done family intensives. Family therapy is really, it can be complex. Some people are like, um, what, it's just more people. There's so many dynamics that goes on there, and especially one thing with families, there's an age range. So you can have teenagers and then you have like a 2-year old, so it can get chaotic really quick. So with my intensives, and I do find that intensives are helpful for families. Sometimes it may even look like I'm working with part of the family, then we come in together. Or
Yeah.
sometimes the intensives looks like um, we will meet for a certain amount of time, we'll pause and take a break, and then they'll come back after lunch. Sometimes it looks like kind of pre-planned activities. I'm not a big planner, but with families, it can get so chaotic, especially if families are in a lot of distress,
Hmm.
that you do want to have some things pre-planned, which kind of moves you more into that directive. But if you go non-directive, it's going to just be chaos.
Right. You need some order.
Yeah. So, for example, for some families, some of my family sessions that I've done, I have these individual easels, and I'll have them all draw on their own easel, and then we'll pause, and then they'll get up and shift to another, do the rotation, and then at
Uh-huh.
the end, each canvas has a combination of everybody's input, and they're all different.
Oh.
Or we've done family shields. We've done the lighthouse tree, not tree, lighthouse storm boat drawing.
Oh.
Um, Definitely done the one with the where they will make like a crown, like royalty, and they will share. They each person, we usually make it out of aluminum foil, will take turns sitting in the seat, and then each family member will say something that they admire about the person. Now that's not the first session. If there's a lot of pain, that could be later on. But typically with family sessions, I love intensives, but we have to be very mindful that it doesn't turn into chaos really quickly. And sometimes it can turn into shut down and quiet. So you need to have like opportunities for movement. One
Mhm.
of my
Mhm.
favorite things is like, what's a song that your family listens to? I really adapt it to like their, have culture in mind. What's
Yeah.
important to them, get them up moving. They might do a shared drawing. So many different opportunities with families, but intensives are helpful because time can pass by so quickly.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. It makes a ton of sense that it would need to be more directive because there's so many things, happening with each person. That's great.
Yeah, and definitely carve out time afterwards to clean up because ooh, it can be a lot.
Right, right. More people, more mess.
Yes, for real.
Yeah, yeah. Another question. Thank you for stressing. Oops, hold on. Thank you for stressing the importance of including and supporting the parents in our work to support the client. Do you have any books or materials that you offer the parents? It says in attachment. I wonder if it's about attachment.
Oh, I will give them, I might point them towards like, and when a parent reads, it's pretty powerful. I might point them towards some books, depending on the parent. There's something Ana Gomez said in the recent Innovative Child Therapy Symposium interview that I had with her, and it just was beautiful. It was just this whole concept of modeling for them and just really kind of she didn't say she speaks so beautifully, like I can't even like replicate how she said it, but she has little pieces of information dispersed throughout the relationship instead of like a lot of like this is what you need to do, because if they if there's some attachment issues, and sometimes, I mean, not always do they have their own attachment issues, especially if
Mhm.
it's from maybe like adoption or something like that. But it can come out in painful ways. So be mindful of that. But the books that I usually share, because I'm definitely, my theoretical orientation is influenced so much by like nervous system informed. So the books that I love for parents to read are The Yes Brain by Dr. Dan Siegel, The Whole Brain Child by Dr. Siegel, Tina Payne Bryson for both of those. Um, and Tina Pring Bryson. Dr. Bryson has her own one on parenting as well, showing up. Also, Beyond Behaviors. I
Mhm.
love for parents to read that by Dr. Mona Delahook. Um, as far as us as clinicians, Claire Millington, she is a registered play therapist supervisor out of Utah. She has a great resource for clinicians on attachment based play therapy. It's fantastic. And I think if a lot of our education comes out in the parent consultation, it could be more customized. But I
Mhm.
do like it when they read those books or listen to them on Audible. But sometimes if we suggest books to people that books aren't their thing, it may
Right.
kind of make it to where they're like, I am not doing my homework, or I feel inadequate, or that's not my
Mhm.
thing. So know who you're talking to, know how they consume and learn from information, and they adapt what you give to them. But that Beyond Behaviors book is great. And I'm writing a book that I plan to give to parents.
Oh, that's
The one that I wish
great.
existed.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Oh,
Mhm.
I love that. I'm checking on our time. We have about 10 more minutes, so if anyone has more questions. Oh, Doris is asking about the name of those books. I'll make sure we include them in the notes with links because there's some really good ones
Yeah, yeah.
that you mentioned. Um,
Also, there is one YouTube video that I always include too. It's the Handy Model the Brain from Dr. Siegel. It's like 2 minutes. It's almost 3 minutes or something. There are a couple versions of it, and it's the shorter one is the clearer. But he talks about when you flip your lid and the parent. That one is so good for parents. It does
yeah.
have some jargon with it, but they understand it, and the jargon gives a little bit of weight.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. Um, so any more questions? Drop them in there. One more question I had when you said parent consultation, I was curious, do you meet with the parents without the child present prior to the intensive, or is it usually always combined? Do you have
And
a
that
preferred way
is
to do it?
And that's definitely unique for theoretic orientation because some people won't meet with the parent without the kid present because it feels like such a sense of agency and like I'm part of the whole process for the kids. So I value that. As
Mhm.
I'm getting more into like Gestalt therapy, I'm kind of moving more into that piece.
Yeah.
But up until now, and I do find, this is what I've been doing, and I find great value in it too, is meeting with the parent and the kid together, but also meeting with the parent alone. Because a lot of times parents are going through such painful stuff and they just need to tell you some things in a very direct way that could kind of sound like, it could sound like trash talk, like whatever way is their reality. If
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
kid heard it, it could induce such shame and such disconnect.
Hmm.
Um, but there does seem to be value in the parent just feeling heard and acknowledged that this horrible thing is happening that they need you to know, especially as a therapist. So I will meet with the parent by themselves,
Hmm.
just to have this reciprocity. Here is what, where we're at in therapy, being mindful not to overshare, and what are some things that are helpful for me to know. If it does start to turn into like I'm just dogging my child, because I know that that's not it, just the exchange of the conversation that deeply embeds almost like this me against them, or
Hmm.
or more problematic. So I'll pause them, float
Oh, I think I might be having some connection issues here.
back through time. Something. Oh, did I freeze up? Did
I
I
don't know
freeze
if
up?
I
Can you hear
did or
me?
you did, but I heard what you were saying about if the dynamic shifts.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to be mindful to make the discussions, whether the kid's present or not, be very therapeutic in nature and not just the let's just
Oops. Oh no.
complain about soft and gentle and validating for the parent.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh, we did lose you just for a second there, but I think we caught the high points.
Oh, good.
Let me see if there's any more questions. I think we covered them all.
Yeah.
Any final words of wisdom or encouragement for folks who are either offering intensive to kids and families or who are considering it?
Yeah, I would say definitely really know your population and ease into it. I wouldn't schedule a 5, 6 hour intensive with the kid right out the gate. Maybe say, I think extending our session an extra half an hour may be helpful, or like a double session, and get the feel for because the child isn't the only variable in there. You showing up as a clinician, and when we're attuned to the client, it can be very fatiguing for us too. So let your nervous system ease into it, and then allow for moments of regulation, allow for pauses, and allow for your needs to be met. A lot of times, especially child therapists and teachers, there's this unspoken, like, you can't use the bathroom while you're in session. I
Right.
mean,
Yes.
you can't eat. And in these intensive sessions, you want to make sure that everybody's needs are taken care of. So there's moments of break, maybe that both of you are like, you're not sitting in there just getting the next thing ready, or cleaning up or something. That pause may just be just as much for you as the child. So it is important the parents there. So
Mhm.
make sure you take care of your own needs. Start out slow, get your footing, and reach out for community. You have a beautiful community, full of people that are interested in intensives. Sometimes just feeling like you're not the only one, and feeling like part of others that have the same passion can give you awareness and wisdom that you wouldn't have otherwise. But reach out into the community, say, hey, is anybody else doing this? Or this is a need that I have. What are your thoughts? That not being alone as a therapist can make a world of difference.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Thank you so much. And I want to say too, that if folks want to stay connected with you, get your resources, I know you have the Facebook group, the Play Therapy Community. And how else can they stay in touch with you and keep learning from you?
There's a EMDR with Kids community too. It's another Facebook group. I have a podcast. I just recorded another episode this morning, and that's Play Therapy Community Podcast. My website is JackieFlynnConsulting.com. Pretty much everything's on there. I just need to link up my trainings. I'm going to do that at least by the end of the day tomorrow. I'm an EMDR basic trainer now, which I'm excited about.
So
So
excited.
I teach like advanced trainings, basic trainings, and play therapy trainings. I do consultation. I am a supervisor, but supervision isn't something that I have ongoing right now. There's only so many hours in a day, so I'm
Hmm.
trying to balance things. So I've pulled back a little bit. But you can find, and I could give you like a link to my
Yeah.
services. I do some parent coaching as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let me pull it up again. I don't even really work with kids too much anymore, but I love this so
Thank you.
much. If you do EMDR, get your hands on it. It's beautiful. And thank you for just this labor of love, how you're giving out to your clients and then sharing the overflow and abundance with us as well. It's just
Oh.
an honor to have you.
Oh, it's an honor to be here. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for doing the beautiful work that you do. And know that you're not alone. You're part of a big community. The work we do is important. Don't neglect yourself in the process because you'll burn out quickly. It's important, and it's important that you take care of yourself so that you can continue to do this and be there for your family and yourself. So for you could be a great therapist for years to come.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye bye.
Everybody take good care.
You
See
too. Bye
ya.
bye.